All right, so tonight, on this episode of I'm Bored and it's like 1 o'clock in the morning, we're going to find out about hardships, boys and girls. Yes, hardships. This is a symbol of the American women of yesteryear. Now, what is this monstrosity? My husband found it in the garbage at work. And actually, he works at a place that has a lot of antiques and they're just throwing them out. And so I said to him, don't throw this in the garbage. This is a piece of Americana. And what is it? It is a washboard and a musical instrument. And you might be like, a musical instrument? That's right, a musical instrument. So we have a washboard. Now, the washboard was invented in 1833 by Stephen Rust. 1833. Now, this particular one is an early 20th century one. It was made in the year of the stock market crash during the Great Depression in 1929. And it does have the date right here stamped in there, February of 29. Oh my goodness. All right, so what we have here is, look at this fluted washboard. That is in great condition. And it reminds me of a radiator of the old cars. Now, what we have here, it says The Dawn. Top-notch, soap-saving, sanitary, front drain. And then if you flip it over on the other side, by the way, this is in phenomenal, phenomenal condition. I think it is made out of oak. I'm not sure of the type of wood. And then on the back, it says National Washboard Company, number 608. Now, these had all different numbers. There's particular ones that people look for musical instruments. I kid you not. A certain one, I forgot what number it is, by National Washboard Company, actually is known as the best sounding washboard. And it says trademark, U.S. patent certificate, made in the USA, Memphis, Chicago, and Saginaw. And let's go into Wayback Machine and find out more about these really amazing, amazing pieces of Americana. This is a heck of a beauty. A beauty. You don't see them in this condition too often. And this was sort of a symbol of what American women had to go through. This is like, you had to have elbow grease back in the days, boys and girls. Now, this one is made out of stainless steel. I don't know, let's get in there. Look at that. Generally, you'll find these all destroyed because they were used. Now, the first ones that were made out of zinc. And Stephen Rust, I guess where they get the word rust from, because these washboards were made out of zinc, and zinc would rust. They also made these ridges in glass as well. But this is in really phenomenal condition. Look at that. And so back in the day, women would actually have to do laundry weekly, and it was a big job. We're not just talking about a little job that we take for, we complain when we wash our clothes now and wash our laundry. We're like, I got to do the wash. And it's really that simple as turning a button on, throwing some soap flakes. Well, back then they used to use soap flakes, but throwing some soap in and just pressing a button. And we complain about that. And so this was a time before that when women would have to spend days, actually weekly. They would do this right before Sunday. Because why, boys and girls? Because we had family. And we had, actually, we had a very moralistic society that used to go to church on Sunday. So you wore your Sunday best, and things had to be done before Sunday. Now, this being made during the Great Depression is pretty interesting, because if you think about it, they couldn't even afford electric irons back then. People were broke. So life for women were not easy. They would spend a whole entire day with soap suds, washing the clothes and boiling. And by the way, it wasn't a one-day thing, because the night before they would do, they were going to do the wash. By the way, this was for the dirtiest of clothes, like overalls and work clothes. And they would actually soak the clothing, the dirtiest of all clothing, in a big steel tub, sometimes a big copper tub, and they would leave it overnight with soap flakes and water, cold water. And then they would get to it the next day. So not only did they have to spend a whole day making supper, and that's what my mom used to call it back in the day, making supper. My mother was an absolute feminist. I mean, an absolute feminist. She got tired of cooking and cleaning every single night when I was about 3 years old, and she gave it up. And she used to say, here's $5, go to the corner and get yourself something to eat. Otherwise, I would be stuck eating my father's dinner. Yes, my father became not only the working man in my house, but also the cooker or the chef. And so he would make things such as Spanish rice. That's right, boys and girls. What is Spanish rice? I didn't know what it was either. And so my dad would boil a huge giant amount of Uncle Ben's white rice, and then take something called tomato puree by Red Pack in a big giant can, which was just plain like pureed tomatoes, and dump it into the white rice and mix it. And he would call it Spanish rice. And that was dinner. So I took my mother's $5 and went down the corner and bought myself like a Hungry Man TV dinner or Shop Boyardee ravioli in a can for dinner. And you might say, how are you still alive? And I don't know. I was really lucky. And so for the most part, I did not want to eat my father's Spanish rice. And my mother felt it was actually a feminist job not to do the laundry. And so we did have a washing machine, but as early as 5 years old, I used to wash my own clothes. I used to drop it in, press the button, pour the soap in, and boom, throw my stuff in the dryer, and I had myself clean clothes. But not in these days, boys and girls. So during the 1950s is when people stopped using washboards because the invention of the washing machine, which came earlier than the 1950s, but people couldn't afford it, became more affordable. And so modern appliances really started to come in the 1950s when women actually were like my mother. They started to say, we're not doing this. We're not spending days washing my man's dirty tidy whities, and we're going to just throw it in a machine. So the National Washboard Company was very prolific in making these really, torturous devices. If you think about it, we'll go over in this video how hard it was to wash your laundry. But they would put actually different little names on it. Top notch was very common to see. Soap saving, sanitary front drain, and I don't know what they mean by that. Let's turn it around. So there's a lot of people that collect early advertising or old advertising pieces. And so this is actually something that somebody would collect if they collect old advertising. So here we go, National Washboard Company. And this is the other side, number 608. So they gave these little ditties numbers. And you'll see a lot of old washboards with certain numbers of certain models. Okay, so here we go, washboards and mangles, laundry in the 1930s. Well, we have a 1929 Great Depression one, but I remember, yes, I actually remember when I was a kid. No, I didn't grow up in the 1800s, I can assure you, but I'm old. And I remember this, the clothesline, and I grew up in New York City. And in Queens, New York, everybody hung their clothes on a line. People had washing machines and dryers, but for the most part, they didn't use them and as much as they use them now. And so you would see a common thing in New York City was a window, and it would have a clothesline out the window. And I remember this old Italian lady that used to babysit me when I was a kid would pull the line in. It was like a pulley system, and she would have wooden clothespins, and I would watch this laborious duty that she took part of a lot, and she would actually use a washboard. Now, she was a little old lady who was a widow and didn't have much money and lived in an apartment, and so you couldn't have your own washing machine like you do now in apartments. And so she used to sit there and scrub her clothes for the week because she was by herself. And I used to watch all this hard work being performed before me, and I was like, just throw it in the machine, and she'd be like, hey, there isn't no machine. I gotta wash the clothes by hand. Okay, so as I read here, oh my God, this sounds quite labor intensive. Before washing, clothes was a simple process as filling the washing machine, adding soap and turning it on. Laundry was arduous, seemingly endless task. Fewer clothes in the wardrobe, that's right. So people had less clothes than we do now. Basically, we have disposable clothes. Clothes are so cheap, you just wear them a couple times and throw them out. Well, at least that's what I know my teenage daughters do. And so basically, the fewer clothes in the wardrobe and the greater number of people employed in physical labor meant that wash was at least a weekly feature or chore for most families, not least to ensure the Sunday best was clean in time for church. On Sunday evening, copper and dolly tubs might be filled with cold water in preparation for a wash day. Clothes were sorted and segregated into woolens, cottons, colors, and whites. Oh my God. As modern day biological detergents were not available, from 1939 and before, apparently, exceptionally dirty clothing like overalls would be left to soak overnight with soap flakes added. White shirts and blouses would stand overnight in cold water containing a blue whitener. Interesting. And here's a 1930s woman looking quite miserable, but I remember these. These were called muumuus, boys and girls. And the old Italian lady that used to babysit me always wore what was called like a house dress that went over her clothes. It was like a shirt that was like an apron. And here we go. This is a lady employing the arduous task of laundry. And you can see the depression glass in the background. Yes, I'm a collector. And let's go. Housewife in the 30s, wearing a printed smock, which we called muumuus in New York City. And so at the start of the wash day, the electric copper was turned on, or a coal fire, oh my God, was lit under the brick copper to ensure that the water in the tubs was hot enough. A dolly peg, an item resembling a 4- or 6-legged wooden stool, out of which a wooden tea piece protruded, would be used to agitate the items that had been soaking overnight. Rotating the dolly peg in this way was physically demanding and tiring affair. The washing process itself involved lifting the items from the cold soak and wringing or mangling each item before transferring them, with more soap flakes, oh my God, into the copper for boiling. Items that remained soiled even after an overnight soak were rubbed on the scrubbing board before being transferred to the copper. A clothes mangle, a hand-operated machine that we see here. Oh my God, what the hell? Can you imagine this? We complain about laundry today. We're spoiled, boys and girls. And so a mangle would be a hand-operated machine consisting of 2 rotating rollers, would be used to squeeze out all the excess water. Clothes would then be hung out to dry on a clothesline or laid over a clothes horse next to the kitchen or living room fire. Very, very interesting. Now, I remember having a tub like this in my basement when I was a little girl. And it was actually quite the mystery to me why it was in the basement. Apparently, on wash day, most rooms in the house were dull, steamy, and damp. Can you imagine this without air conditioning? Dear God. After the steam had cleared, the next part of the process was ironing. In the 30s, it was a luxury to have an electric iron. What? I did not know that. Let alone a steam iron. Instead, irons were made of cast iron consisting of a flat base with a handle. They were heated by either being placed on the hob at the side of the fire or over, imagine this in the summer, or lighted over a gas ring. In the 30s, it was a luxury to have an electric iron. Okay. Once the iron was being used, it would soon cool down, so the task had to be completed quickly. Oh my God, most households would have more than one flat iron and used simultaneously for steam ironing and starching. Water or starch solution was sprayed onto the garment before applying the iron. Often by the time the washing, drying, and iron processing had been fully completed, a wash day had come back around again. Oh, good Lord. And they even employed children to do this sort of job. Oh my God, boys and girls. Look at the horror. This is really, look at this. Even men did it. Is that a man? Oh no, it's a woman. Oh my Lord. And look, you can even play the washboard. That guy's playing the washboard. Yes, it's a musical instrument too. And this is some of the little pots or, what do you call that again? Tubs. Yes, tubs that were employed in the use of this. Look how happy she looks. Not. And look at this poor woman, slaving over this laundry. And here's another very, very, very happy looking housewife. Oh, definitely not. And I just looked up New York City tenements. And this is exactly what I was talking about. When I was at the little old Italian lady's house, she lived in a building. And this is what it used to look like with the clotheslines out the window, boys and girls. And everybody in the poor neighborhoods would employ these clotheslines out the window. And I remember this as clear as yesterday. And look at this building. Look at this. Look at all the clothes that would be hanging outside the windows of people's apartments. Courtesy of the Library of Congress, who owns like almost every good photograph, this is a tenement yard in New York City between 1900 and 1910. And look at all the clothes, boys and girls, just dangling. Can you imagine all the work that went into washing each and every one of these little garments hanging on the clothesline? Boy, do we not appreciate anything anymore. And so there's loads of washboards that you can buy. You can pay $280 for some, as much as, let's see, is this one really $1,000? That's insane. So $230 to $640. Do I have that one? No, I don't. $390. I guess certain ones are really sought after. I don't know why. Here's a 1910 paper ad. And here's it. Let's see how much they were. And here we go. Let's check that out. What does that say? Little lady. So this was a little one. Here's another one. Look at that. And it has the advertisements on them, which is quite cool. Solid zinc. How much were they, boys and girls? I'm blind. I can't see right now. Apparently, is there a price? Oh, here we go. Here we go. Let's try to blow this up if we can. And the price was, per dozen, $2.50. A big one was $4.25 per dozen. Wow, these were cheap in 1910, actually. $6.50 per dozen. Wow, a dozen of them were 28 pounds. Very interesting. Let's look at the other price. And look at these. Glass Queen. These were actually glass washboards in 1910. And were they more money? Yes, they were more money. $7 per dozen for the crappiest one. $6. Oh no, for the best one. $6 and $6.50 per dozen. Really quite interesting. Let's check this out. And the clothes ringers, the dreaded clothes ringers. It was $43.50 per dozen for some of them. Let's check this out. $32.90 per dozen. These things weighed a lot. I think this one says 12 pounds. The weight for a dozen was 180 pounds, boys and girls. So these were like 10 to 12 pound things. Look at these. And so this was the day in the life of a woman back in the good old days. Well, not the good old days. So here we go, boys and girls. Here's some washboards you'll find. It says the National Washboard Company, established in 1903. From 1907 onward, the National Washboard Company operated a division of the Wabash Screen Door Company, a.k.a. Wabash Incorporated. Oh, let's check this out. All right, here we go. Oh, look at this. National Washboard Company, established in 1903. They have a museum, an actual online museum. And I guess it was a Chicago company. Very interesting. And here we go. Let's go ahead and check this out. Look at this. And they had different ones. The Universal 134 was 1920s. And long before upcycling and repurposing became part of the antique lexicon, it was the washboard that practically invented reinvention, evolving from a contrivance of laborious laundering practices into a peppy and versatile musical instrument, which we'll listen to in a moment. We'll hear what a washboard sounds like. The artifact in our own museum collection, the National Washboard Company's number 134, aka the Universal, seems to have been practically well suited for both business and pleasure. So apparently that's the one they look for when it comes to musical washboards. So that's why those are so expensive that we just saw on the internet, boys and girls. So we're looking for this one. This one was the Stradivarius of washboards. We're very, very interesting. And wow, so the rough surface on this one made actually a really, really great sound. And it says here, hold on, unlike other boards that are shrill or ringy, the timbre is relatively mellow and understated, at least for a washboard. The 3 wooden panels on the backside also form an enclosure behind the zinc rubbing surface. That creates a resonating chamber that adds tonal depth and helps drive the sound kind of like a drum. Really interesting. And it says such glowing praise makes it seem like washboard designers were actually thinking about tone and timbre 100 years ago. But alas, it appears to have been a happy accident. Back then, a washboard was merely an appliance, a simple necessity of day-to-day life. And one company made more of them than anybody else. Back in the day, from the late 1800s through the 50s, washboards could be found in just about every basement, kitchen, or makeshift laundry nook in the country. Used mostly by women working over a water basin, the boards became ubiquitous background accessories of blue-collar American home life, the showcasing of one's determination or resignation to sweat and sacrifice for the simplest achievements. Oh boy, even when mechanical wringers and electrical washing machines became more widely available in the 20s, they weren't viable options for most families, even less so during the Great Depression. Rather than having a solution for cleaning clothes, there was a task and a universal tool that came with it. The standard design of wood-framed washboard with a grooved metal cleaning surface, copper, brass, or zinc, was fairly unique to the United States initially, and the majority of the manufacturing wound up centered in the Midwest. The industry leader and the maker of our universal washboard was technically headquartered in Chicago, but the actual power structure of the National Washboard Company is a bit more complicated than that. And here's some ads. Look at this. National Washboard Company. Superior quality washboards. This was the 1920s, boys and girls. We cannot get enough good men to sell national washboards. So men, I guess, they needed wandering salesmen. Very interesting. Imagine getting a man knocking on your door. Hey, I had this nifty thing for you to do for your husband. Wash all his laundry all day long with this nifty, whatever the heck, gimmick. Oh, God. This is the man. Responsible for a lot of women's hardships right there. And there we go. So we continue to go on. Well, check this out. 1904 ad for Washboards of Memphis before they acquired the National Washboard Companies. Very interesting. A complete line of first quality goods superior to any on the market. Right for catalog and prices. The Wabash Screen Door Company. And here's another one of their products. You can even look up the patent design numbers. Sometimes I do that with antiques when they have the patents on them. It's really fun to find out more information. Look at the size. Look at the size of this factory. They made a lot of washboards. Okay, so other popular national washboard brands included the Atlantic, the Invincible, the Junior, the Jewel, the Chief, and the King, to name just a handful. The artwork was fairly typical of the time period and probably wasn't given a great deal of concern, but decades later, all the various logos helped create a collector's market for people attached by the washboard's distinctive Americana decor. And there's the Dawn. That's the one we have. And look at this. Okay, so basically, it's a tool for the poor. And apparently made up to the 1970s, right up to the end, the leaders of American washboard industry clearly saw their product as a tool of the poor, something obsolete to the middle and upper classes in the era of the washing machine, but an old reliable for everyone else, like the little old Italian lady that lived in the apartment building that actually employed one of these that I watched, slave over this thing. Okay, it says rhythmic resurrection. So apparently, it's an African-American type of roots music type of deal. Somewhere along the line, somebody, or more likely somebody's, realized that the corrugated metal on a washboard doubled as a fine-sounding rhythmic percussion instrument. From African roots music to the Appalachian folk, Creole, Zydeco, and the jug band craze, performers across the country were putting their mama's old washboards to new use, often employing thimbles, sticks, or spoons as scraping elements. Some even strapped the boards to their chest to free up their range of motion. The washboard, symbol of burdens of working class life, now was sought after medium for artistic expression. Even when it became obsolete for the original purpose, it maintained its pop culture relevance. Okay, and here's somebody playing it, and she's using spoons, and I'd love to do this right now, but now it is 1:34 a.m., and if I did this, my husband would call up the psych ward and have me taken away. But I do want to play it right now really badly. So this is another relic of the past that was saved by my husband, who hates antiques, by the way. He saw this, and he texted me a picture of it, and he said, I'm throwing this out. And I'm like, don't throw it out. We need this. And he's like, do we really need this? And I'm like, yes, we need this. And he brought it home for me. Usually he likes to throw my antiques in the garbage, but apparently this thing enamored him because he brought it home and did not throw it out. So there we go. Now let's go listen to someone playing one of these really fast and what it sounds like. Okay, I did not think about that. That is actually genius to use thimbles on your fingers. Do you see that? Thimbles on the fingers. But I will tell you, it's like nails on a blackboard to me. It's sort of giving me like chills up and down my spine. Okay, apparently they actually do this in Prague, Czech Republic also. Let's check this out. Holy shiz. Okay, damn, that guy's good. And sadly, a lot of people walking by and could care less. Okay, so now I'm going on Amazon and I'm going to order like 10 thimbles, 10 metal thimbles, because I want to play this too, and it looks like a lot of fun. So I hope you've had fun finding out about the arduous journey of many women. And aren't you glad that we don't have to do this anymore? Can you imagine having to wash with one of these things, with tubs, and then spending all those hours, and then steaming up your house in the summer, where it's like 90 degrees outside and it becomes 110 degrees as you slave over one of these things? I bet you're glad, right?